G'day folks. Well, this is going to be a walkthrough solve with jumbling of this edge turning octahedron. And I've already done a walkthrough solve with a non-jumbling solve, and that was tricky enough. This one takes it to another level. So with the jumbling, it just creates a bunch more stuff that's going on that we need to deal with. So this is a walkthrough solve, but it's kind of a little bit of a cross with the tutorial because I'm going to make sure that I include every possible thing that you can encounter. I guess on a normal walkthrough solve, you just do what you come up with. But here, if I don't get a particular thing, I'm going to set up for it. So the edge turning octahedron. So it's an octahedron, it turns on its edges. Now, at the moment, it's just been scrambled without jumbling. So the first thing that I want to make sure that I show is the standard jumbling move for this thing. And as far as I can work out, it's this. You can sort of bring one here, and then you've got this edge. These two pieces on that edge will then spin around like that, and we can return them. So that's done a bunch of swaps of different things. The most interesting thing, the most important thing for our purposes are these wide triangles. So that yellow and the gold wide triangle. There are other wide triangles that swap, the centers swap, and the corners swap as well. And in fact, these edge wings swap, but they don't change their parity. So that's the standard jumbling move. So what I would be generally doing to scramble this thing using jumbling is to do a few of them. Just move my way around the puzzle. I can never get this. Well, that's better. I think it has to be right in the center. They have to join right at the center in order to, I might have already done that one. Let's try the blue, the orange center, put them right in the center, and there we go. So that's where I need to go. When I've done a few of these, I'll just do some more 180s on the edges, and then some more jumbling. And when you're happy with the amount of jumbling that you've done without any shape shifting, it's then time to do a little bit of shape shifting with jumbling. And so what I would generally do is just turn one of them and then turn that edge and then return this. And I'll just stop there because that's the position that you want to be if you want to get these things back to normal. Obviously, when these two corners are kind of pointing downwards towards each other, I bring them together, then I turn them, that's going to unjumble and unshapeshift. So that's the main one. There is one other one that's a little bit trickier, and hopefully I'll come across that. But for now, it's just sort of a matter of trying to shapeshift it more. I find this very difficult to shapeshift it too much. Things just get blocked, and so I'll do what I can here, but it may well be that I have not much that I can do. I do want to talk quickly about, I guess the word is fudging. And what I mean by that is if I can show that, I'll show that here. No, it'll definitely come up somewhere. It's just so in fact, I won't try and find it now. Just when it happens, I'll talk about it. I'll just try and do a little bit of shape shifting. You can see it's already starting to take the shape of something that's not really octahedral. And I think a lot of the time what happens is I think to myself, oh good, I'll do that because that's going to, make it worse. It actually brings things back to the state they were before I did it. Now, what can I turn? That. So these are essentially lined up now like that, but I don't think it's going to come back because they're not in that position. So that's kind of good at the moment for what I want. Let me just see if I can demonstrate what I'm talking about with the fudging, which I probably can't. I would like to be able to turn that edge if I can. it going? Yes, it is. Well, this is certainly looking reasonably shape-shifted. Sometimes you look at it and you think, oh, there's no way I'm getting back from that. And then 3 turns later, it's back to shape. Is that going to go? If that edge goes, this might do what I want to do. Ah, here we go. Okay. So what I want to just show is that on this particular puzzle, if I look at that corner there, and I've got this corner here, and I'd like to turn this corner past there, I don't know if you can see it or not, but it just barely pushes this one out the way. As it passes, it pushes it out the way and keeps going. Now, if you're doing that quickly, you almost don't even notice it. But for me, I count that as fudging. I'm not prepared to do that move. The difference is if the corner's not there, if it's something like maybe an edge wing or something else that's not sticking out like that, it will happily pass it without touching. And so I'm definitely prepared to do that move. So it's kind of up to you whether you decide that you're going to accept moves like that or not. I feel like if you do accept moves like that, then you're going to run into some potentially interesting blockages later on. So for this solve, I'm not doing that. But I think it's jumbled enough and it's shape-shifted enough. So in terms of now returning it to an octahedral form, that's obviously the first thing to do here. So I would initially just be looking to see if there's anything obvious that I can turn into position on its axis. I think that looks better because that enables this thing. Now, often I would like to do that, but then of course that's going to touch against there. So I'd probably go, I'd see if I could go the other way, if it works. Again, that's going to touch there, so I'm not super happy with either of those moves. So I'll just leave that there for the moment. And just have a look at what I can actually turn, which may not be heaps. It may well be that that's almost the only thing that I can turn here. That's done well. I can't turn this because of this center here, and that is blocked where? Can't even tell where that's blocked. So this is the one that I was looking at. I'll continue turning that and see if it creates anything else, which would be helpful. That can sometimes be good, having that little configuration. That's one of the other one that I had a little bit of trouble initially working out what to do with. Quite happy with this one actually, because it's a pretty decent. You can see here kind of what I was talking about. This corner doesn't touch that at all, so that happily goes past there. There's no touching. I'm more than happy with that. It's a pretty decent little scramble. Now, you can look at that and see that it's starting to take the form of an octahedron again. So that's looking better, but there do seem to be all these sort of axes skew-if. So this point, in fact, there's quite a lot of them. This point, probably what I do, I can't turn that. I can turn this one. I may have just turned that one somewhere else as well. I like to separate these things if I can. And I'm looking for things like this. So this corner down to the center portion there, that and that are two things that I definitely want, because if I can get them together, I can happily deal with them. So the question for me now is, are they in the correct sort of position? I think they are. If this will pass there, and get that up to that position. Now it's not going to turn because of that. So one thing I might do is just see if I can do something with that, but it's pretty unlikely there. So then I would attempt to take this part over somewhere else towards here. Maybe move it this way. Try doing something with this. Now, does that move? Now these potentially can now be brought together as I want them to. Now if they turn, which they will, lovely, that's I think a bit better. Then I can turn that. Now has that, I've got one sticking out here. These look good, but they're not exactly on their axes. So that's where that should be. You can see it looks like now I've got 1, 2, essentially 3 pieces that I want to get sorted. So I'm going to try moving that up there, moving that down and turning this back. Oh, that's looking good. So you can see that if I just undo that, that's where I was. And you can see the 2 corners, one of them is going to move up towards the other one, and then I'm going to twist 180 and then bring it back. And that's dealt with that. What does that now leave me? This situation, by the looks of it, which is I'm really glad this has happened. It's the other situation where it's not as simple as that. It's a pretty simple fix, but it took me a while to figure it out. So if you want to think about this in another way, you could look at it like it was probably that sort of position there, and you've got a lot of stuff out. What I discovered is that the best thing is to have this sitting so the centers are flat. And when I say flat, I guess I mean in that same plane as over here. And then what I want to do is bring that center there, so that it creates a really nice edge complete in the center in the middle here. And then I want to turn this, what I'm calling, I don't even know what it is. Is it 90 degrees? I'm not sure. I want to turn it to there so that I can then undo those 2 moves. I want to undo that one, put it back to where it was, or does this go the other way? I think that goes that way, this goes that way. And now what has been created, if I continue turning that around, you'll see there's now 2 of these things that I wanted there. And that means it's going to be fairly close to being able to get it back to shape. Now I can just rotate that, bring this up to position, spin it round. That's good. Put that back. And we are back to octahedral shape. So that one is probably, I guess, one of the more trickier ones that I've had, which will give you an idea that they're not generally too hard. As long as you know those 2 basic techniques, you shouldn't have any trouble getting them back. Back to octahedral shape now, and it's in the same form as when we would have started a non-jumbling solve. With a non-jumbling solve, you remember that we had these, what are we calling these? These wide triangles in their fixed orbits, so they couldn't leave their orbits. And so we could look at these and say, well, this is these belong in a particular orbit, and I know which orbit that is, and so I know what corners go here and there. But the thing is, we've already done a bunch of jumbling here. So what we're going to find is things such as, if I can find an example somewhere, this orbit here. You'll notice in this orbit there's a white, and I follow it around, there's another white. There's 2 whites in that orbit. Well, that shouldn't happen in any orbit, obviously. And this one here, there's a gold, there's gold. Thought there was a couple of yellows, maybe not. So you're going to get things like double up colors, and you just don't know which orbit it is. You don't know this yellow, gold, white, silver. What orbit should that be? So the approach here initially is just to start solving the corners. You have no idea whether they should be, whether the particular corner should be sitting here or here, it doesn't matter. Just start solving the corners, and that's what I'm going to do. So I'll just pick a corner, this white, blue, orange, silver, and so that's where that goes, and then find another corner that goes near it. You can see a white orange one's going to belong over here, but it's not going to go into that position. So I'll just turn it down and around. I've managed to magically bring the other corner up. So I might just put that out the way for now because I can easily turn that up, and I want to get this one into position. So I'll bring that down and around. That's now into position. I can turn the other white corner up. So all three of those white corners are done. This is doing it the same as the non-jumbling solve. What I need to do now, and there are a couple of ways that you can get the other yellow corners done. You'll see here that this yellow corner is correct and it's in position and it's oriented correctly. These two, this should be a green-orange corner, but there's no green-orange there. So if I was to turn that around, that would now be corners in correct position, but obviously not oriented. In the non-jumbling solve, I showed a method for rotating two corners, one anti-clockwise, one clockwise, and you can happily use that, no problem. I want to show a slightly different way that I've been doing it. I think it's a little more interesting. What I'm going to do is this. Once you get to the situation where you've got one corner that's correct and in position and correctly oriented, like that one there, I'm just going to do a 3 cycle to bring this out to one of these other positions. It doesn't matter which one. So I'm going to 3 cycle these 3 corners. So I'll turn that to there. Okay, so this was the corner that's just come out from there. So I know that to solve these 3 corners, that's going to go back into that position like that. So now what I'm thinking is, I'll just turn it around. I'm going to bring this to here. This is my 3rd yellow corner. And this 3rd yellow corner, because the 3 cycle is like this 3rd yellow corner is going to go into that position. So when I turn this around, I can clearly see that's the yellow face. Ignore the yellow center, that may or may not be there. This is the yellow face. So what I'm going to do now is just get this 3rd corner correctly oriented into this position so that when it turns up to here, it's going to land on the yellow face. I would just begin by doing this and saying, is that correct? And the way I tell is simply to turn it up like that. And I can see, no, that's not where the yellow sticker should be. It should be over here. So I'll undo that and think, all right, well, how else can I get it so that this yellow, I think it's actually got to be here, is going to land correctly for this 3rd piece. So what I would normally do is move it around like that. Now I'm not sure if I should move it around like this or if I should go back here and come this way. So what I'll do is just start by saying, well, that's my starting position. So let's just try doing these 2 moves. Down here and up there. Now I have a feeling that those 2 moves have now oriented that so that it will correctly, yes it does, place in that position. So now I know that my 3rd corner is correctly positioned and oriented to place up here. So this is my first one, it's going to move to here. I don't need to worry about this one because if I've got this one correct and I've got this one correct, I cannot have a single twisted corner. So now that they're in correct positions, I now carry out the 3 cycle. This is the simple part. You can see that one has gone into its position. That one has gone into its position. Now I just need to undo the 2 moves that I had to get this one from there to here. There were 2 moves and it was down this direction. You can see at the moment the white corners are out. But if I do those 2 moves, you'll see, all the white corners are back, blues are back, and in fact that 3rd or other yellow corner is also back. So looking around, you can see all the corners are now done. So you might prefer that method of doing corners. If you don't like that method, you can just do the thing that I showed in the non-jumbling solve. But as it is, whatever you do, get the corners solved. Now, here's the first time where it's a little bit different. We want to check the centers now because we don't know whether there might be a swap of corners. We have no way to tell unless we check the centers. So I don't need to solve the centers so much. I can, but it's not essential. What I need to do is find out if overall I'm dealing with 1 swap of centers or 2 swaps of centers. So let me see if I can do it without solving. I note here that the blue's in and the orange is in. So that leaves 6 centers. unless there are any others that are solved. I don't think there are. So let's have a look at this white center. Where's that got to go? White goes to red, goes to silver, comes back to here. So there's a white to red to silver to white. That's a 3 cycle, 3 centers involved there. What about the other 3? I've got yellow going to gold, going to green. Okay, that's another 3 cycle. So what that means is that I have 2 3 cycles. So there are no swaps of centers there, which means I have nothing to fix. I can now start placing my wide triangles into their correct orbits. However, as I said at the start, this is a little bit of a cross between a walkthrough and a tutorial. I want to look at what happens if you do have a swap of centers here. So I'm going to set up for that now. Okay, so here I've got a scenario where I've got all the corners solved, and you'll see that I've got the yellow and the red center in position. What I need to do now is check what's happening with the other centers. So let's start with this orange one. Where's the orange one got to go? Orange goes to silver, goes to gold, goes to green, goes to white, goes to blue, goes to orange. Now, I can't even keep up with that. However, what I know is that there are 6 centers involved because I've got the other 2 were solved and that used every single center. So there's 6 centers involved. If there's an even number of centers that I'm going to swap, then I've essentially got 1 swap of centers. So for example, I could, and I will maybe just solve a few of them now just to demonstrate this, and I'm going to solve the centers the same way that I'll do it later. So I might say, well, to make it easier, I'm going to put the blue in here and I'll put the orange over to here by just doing a corner piece series center cycle. Okay, so let's have a look now. I've got the blue, the orange, the red, and the yellow solved. What does that leave me? Let's try another little cycle here. I've got green going to white, going to silver, going to gold, back to green. So now you can see that I've put 2 of them in position. I'm now left with a 4 cycle. So it doesn't matter what I'm doing, I am not going to be able to get down to a 3 cycle. I'm going to have a 4 cycle or a 2 cycle. And this is essentially a single swap of centers. So when you get to this point, what you need to do is now basically assume that one of your corners, you essentially need to swap the centers. So swap 2 centers, doesn't matter which 2. So to swap 2 centers, I'll do that. And now you assume that these 2 corners are correct and you build the rest of the puzzle around those 2 corners. So the centers are now fixed. Now I've got to resolve the corners. So I'll grab this other white corner, bring it down to this position, and just see if I can do that as before. Now I've got this one in position. Let's have a look up here. This should be green-orange. Okay, you'll notice that green-orange needs to come and match there. I've got 2 corners out, so I would do the same thing that I did before in solving these last 2 corners. So which one's going where? Let's have a look. The gold, green is coming up to here, I think. Oh, the red gold, yes, good. So that's my 3rd corner. I want to now turn this around and I'm going to see, I need the yellow to be there for it to work, you may remember from before. So I might just see what happens if I do this. No, that's gone the other way. So what that tells me is I'm going to move it to here and then do a cycle around the bottom here. Okay, so as before, that yellow is now in the correct position. I can cycle these 3 corners. That's done. You'll notice these 2 are finished. I now just have to put this one back where it was. Now, which way did I go? I think I went around like I actually can't remember, so just let me ponder this. I had to put it back here and then go around like that. I think I've got to go back this way. If not, I'll figure it out soon. I reckon that's good because the whites and all the other corners are in position. So that has now completed the yellow corners. Now, we had these done before, so what's the issue? Well, we had essentially a single swap before. So let's check now the centers. I've got the gold in position. I've got the blue in position. I've got the orange in position. So there's 3 in position. Let's check the others. The silver goes to green, goes to yellow, goes to red, goes to white, which goes back to silver. So there are 5 centers there. We have a 5 cycle. That, of course, is essentially the same as a 3 cycle. So we now know those centers are good. Those 5 pieces were used because I had 3 other centers that were all done: the blue, the gold, and the orange. So as long as you get down to a 5 cycle or a 3 cycle or 2 swaps, that's quite possible as well. So the red and the yellow might swap and the green and the gold might swap, no problem. Once you're in that position, you now know that your corners and centers are good to go. So at this point here, what we've got to do now is build the wide triangles around the corners. You might remember in the non-jumbling solve that we started with a particular orbit of the wide triangles, and then we looked and said, that needs to be a particular corner up here, so I'm going to change the corners. We could do the reverse here. So we now have these fixed corners. So these white and yellow corners are not moving. I'm not going to change them in any way. I want to build the white-yellow orbit of wide triangles between those 2 faces. So when I'm calling that the white-yellow orbit, that means it's an orbit that does not contain a white or yellow piece. So let's check. I've got blue, green, that's good. Orange, red, that's good. I've got another blue and I've got a yellow. So clearly that yellow has to disappear and this extra blue has to disappear. You might have noticed that in here there are no gold and silvers. So that now tells me, right, I've got to essentially swap out a yellow and a blue for a gold and a silver. So my task next is to find a different orbit that hopefully contains a gold and a silver. It doesn't matter which orbit. So I would initially look here and say, when I do a jumbling move to do this swap, you may remember when I showed it at the start, I did this and then turned this edge. Well, you can see the gold and the blue wide triangles there. They are the ones that we're interested in swapping. So in this orbit, I've got to get rid of the blue and the yellow. I would have a look over here and say, does this particular orbit have a gold and a silver? It's certainly got a gold. Oh, and it's got a silver. Beautiful. So this is a great orbit to use to swap out with these pieces. So what I'm going to do here, and you can do this when you have 2 swaps. So I've got the blue and the yellow to swap with the gold and the silver. You swap one of the sets of pieces and then you move the other piece. I'll move the yellow into here. I'll move the silver into here, and then I'll swap them back. And what that will do is keep the corners and the centers in their correct positions and all that sort of thing. So because we're putting wide triangles into position, unfortunately, I'm going to have to use the move to get wide triangles where I want them. In other words, to cycle these wide triangles. So I'm not really solving the wide triangles yet. I'm just putting them into their correct orbits. But in order to, once I've done a swap of these 2, I want the yellow over here. Well, in order to move that yellow, I'm going to have to move it without disturbing corners. That's the key thing. And I have tried to do it disturbing corners and it gets so confusing that I just can't do it. So for me, this is how I'll approach it. Definitely need to swap the gold and the blue. So I'll do that first. I'll do my jumbling move. Okay, so now I've got a gold in this orbit. Note that this is still a white, yellow. I've got the gold piece in this orbit. That's one of the swaps. I now need to get the yellow piece down to there. So I would think, well, how can I do that? And if you remember from moving wide triangles around, this is the sequence that we use and that we're going to use when we place them. I would say these 3, and I want to move these wide triangles downwards here. And so I'm going to do left, right, left, and then a front, and then a left, right, left, and then a front. And that's just going to cycle these three, and particularly put the yellow into that position where I want it. So left, right, left, and a front, left, right, left, and then a front. It's kind of good doing this because you're using the same sequence that you're going to be using to solve the wide triangles when they're all in their correct orbits. So what that has done is put this yellow into here. Now this was the gold that we just brought in from the other orbit. So that's now safely in this orbit, no problem. I've put the yellow here. Now I've got to go over here. There's the blue. I want to put the silver into this position. So here I go. And again, I've got these three, and I might, this time I say the silver's got to go upwards. So I want the piece movement to go up the hill. So the only difference is I turn the front first. So front, and then a left, right, left, and front, and then a left, right, left. So the silver is now there. So note that these are the two pieces that I now need to swap again. So now that I've got them in position, I undo that jumbling move that I did before to do this other swap. And when I do that, you will note that all the corners have come back to their correct positions. And also I would have fixed up the swap of centers that I did. So now let's have a look at the white yellow orbit, the orbit of pieces between the white yellow faces. What have we got? Orange, red, silver, gold, blue, green. Perfect. That now has all the correct pieces and no extra pieces. It has no white yellow pieces. So that orbit, or those pieces, are now correctly stored in their orbit. So that's the white yellow done. I would next choose another orbit. I'd say let's look at the gold silver orbit. So the gold silver orbit, the orbit between the gold and the silver faces, I want there to be no gold and silver pieces. What have I got? Yellow, white, red, I've got an extra yellow, I've got an extra white, blue. Okay, what have I got? I think I've got 2 yellows, 2 whites, a red and a blue. So this is going to be a bit of work. This is pretty normal. The only pieces I've got in here, what have I got? White, yellow, blue. So I need to keep those pieces. For example, I want to get rid of this white, this yellow. Oh no, hang on, I've actually got a red here, which is also good. I've got the red, the blue, the white, the yellow. No, so it's just a white and a yellow that I need to get rid of. What do I need to bring in? Well, I don't want to bring in gold and silver. I want to bring in the other 2 pieces that are missing. So what are those pieces? Green and orange. You'll notice there's no green and orange there. So, as before, I've now got 2 swaps. I would look at, well, it doesn't matter which one of these. I'd have a look at this one and just see, here's the other piece. What orbit is that part of? If I turn that around, I can see that's part of the red-orange orbit. That's fine, I can use that one, because what I don't want to do is use the white-yellow orbit, because that's settled. So let's say that I wanted to swap this white with pieces from this orbit. I need to check, does this orbit have an orange and a green? Well, it certainly has an orange and it has a green. Beautiful. So this will do fine. So the first thing, the white is in position. I'd like to put either the orange or the green into that position there. So I'd now look here and say, right, the orange has got to come to there, move down the hill. So let's cycle the orange into that position first. Okay, that's done. I can now do a swap of the white and the orange. Let's do that swap by jumbling. That's 2 of them swapped. Now the other 2, I needed to get rid of an extra yellow, so that yellow has got to go to here. So I'll have a look at the cycling the yellow up the hill to that position. Right, the yellow's there. what did that white have to be replaced with? I think it was the green, was it? It was, because the orange is already here now, so I need to get a green to this position. So this time I can look at these three and cycle the green downwards. So it's left, right, left. And then a front turn. All right, now I've got the green and the yellow that I can do the swap, so I'll jumble those two. And that, of course, will put the corners and the centers back to where they should be. You'll see that's all happened. So if I now check the gold-silver orbit, red, green, blue, yellow, white, orange. Perfect. Has it affected the white-yellow? Well, let's check. Here's the white-yellow orbit running along here. Blue, green, orange, silver, red, gold. No, that's still great. So that's 2 orbits I've done. I've only got 1 orbit left to do, because if I do the 3rd orbit, the 4th orbit must be done also. So it doesn't matter, pick one of them. I'll pick the blue-green orbit and I'll have a look at the pieces here. I've got a blue, clearly that can't be there. Red, white, orange, so I've got red, orange is good. White, silver. So the white's okay, the silver's okay, the red's okay, the orange is okay. I've got a green and a blue which need to go. And what do they need to be replaced with? A gold and a yellow. Okay. Now the only orbit that I haven't looked at yet is the red-orange orbit. So what that means is I have to now, I can't just say for sure this can be used and swapped over here, because this is actually part of the white-yellow orbit. So I need to find along here which piece is going to swap with a piece in the red-orange orbit. And if you notice that green piece there, if I swap it over here, this is part of the red-orange orbit. So that is the positioning that I want to do. Here are the pieces in my blue-green orbit running along here. So I'm going to just hold it as I have been. What did I need to get rid of? See, the first thing is going, where are the 2 orbits that I need to involve? And I've found them. Now I've got to remember the pieces again. So it was the blue-green orbit. I had to get rid of the blue and the green. And I had to also bring in a gold and a yellow. Now, this is also going to be a double swap. Now, because it's not always going to happen that you get a double swap, you may get a 3 cycle, and I definitely want to demonstrate that as well. So I'm going to do this as 2 3 cycles. So the first thing that I'll do is I'll 3 cycle this green out to there, and what do I want to bring in? A yellow. That was one of the ones that I wanted to bring in. So here's how I would do a 3 cycle. I would think the green needs to go there. I'm going to move the white across to here and the yellow back to here, so that the yellow's in the correct orbit. So if that's the case, I 3 cycle these pieces as follows using jumbling. I firstly do a single swap of the white and the green. So I'll do that. Then I swap the yellow and the green. Now, how do I swap the yellow and the green? Well, not really swap them. I just bring the yellow into that position. So here you can see I want to move that up the hill here. So I'm going to 3 cycle those pieces. Okay, the yellow's in position, and now I'm going to swap the yellow with the white by jumbling. All right, all the corners and centers are back. Let's check. I'm working on the blue-green orbit, and I now have a yellow in there, and I do not have a green, so that's good. So the only thing left to do now is, you'll notice there's no gold in this orbit, but there is a blue. So now I still need to work with these 2 orbits in order to make this happen. So I need to firstly bring the blue over to here. In fact, it's not really essential. I could do a different 3 cycle, but I'm just going to show you how I do it. Bring the blue over to here first. Right, so that blue is ready to move out of this orbit. Now the piece that needs to move in is the gold piece, which will be sitting in this orbit somewhere. Now the key thing is this orbit, the other orbit here, which is the orange-red orbit, also has a gold piece. And so in the orange-red orbit, if I look at it like this, there will be 2 gold pieces, and there they are. So the first thing that I want to do is bring one of the gold pieces over into this position. So I'll cycle these 3 pieces so that the gold lands there. Okay. The next thing I want to do is have another gold piece ready to move into that position. So what I'm going to do now is just move this gold piece down to this position here, cycling it in the same way. All right. So now I've got a gold piece in 3 cycling distance for here. There's the gold that I want to bring in here. If I bring it back to the starting position, here's my green-blue orbit. These are the pieces in the orbit. I've got to get the blue out of the blue-green orbit. What do I want to bring in? A gold piece. Well, there's a gold piece there. So let's do that. Let's firstly jumble those 2. And that's fantastic. Now I've got a gold in here and I've got a blue in here. What's the problem? The corners and the centers have been swapped. So to deal with this, I now want to bring a gold piece to there. Hopefully you'll understand why, but I'm going to just turn that around, bring this second gold piece over to here. So I'm going to move up the hill, bring it down like that. Okay, now that gold piece is in position. Notice now that I need to get the corners and the centers back, so I need to do another jumbling move. When I do that, I now have 2 gold pieces opposite each other. So those gold pieces will swap and it will not affect the wide triangles. So that's now completed getting all of the wide triangles into their correct orbits, which is obviously a pretty major stage and something we didn't have to do with a non-jumbling solve. And you can check. You can say, well, let's look at the green blue. This orbit should have no green blue pieces and it should have gold, silver, orange, red, white, yellow. Yes, it does. What about the red orange orbit? It should have no red orange and it should have yellow, white, silver, gold, green, blue. Perfect. And we of course can check the others. The yellow white orbit should have no yellows and whites. That's great. And the last one was the gold silver orbit, which should have no gold silvers. Perfect. So all the pieces are now in their correct orbits and we know that they're correct based on the corners, which we checked initially. Now that has been done, that leads us to the next stage, which is to solve the wide triangles which are already in their orbits. And so this is where we're just cycling pieces around. I'll do that the same way that I did it before. However, there is one extra thing that can happen in this stage which did not happen in the non-jumbling solve, so stay tuned for that. Let's have a look at this orbit first. I've got a white piece sitting in here, that's good. Can I get a blue there easily? Oh, not really. Maybe. I can get a gold much more easily here, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to cycle green to gold to blue first of all, and I'm doing exactly the same sequence that I've just been doing to get these wide triangles where I wanted them. So if I'm moving the pieces downwards, I want to do left, right, left first. If I'm moving them upwards, I do the front first. So the white, the gold, the green is done. Let's have a look at the others. I've got a silver to a yellow to a blue. Good, that's a 3 cycle. Let's finish that off by cycling those 3 pieces down the hill. And that orbit has now been solved. So the pieces in that orbit are all done. Fantastic. Let's have a look at this, another orbit. This is the gold-silver orbit. the blues in position already. Can I get a white? Yes, I can. In fact, I can go orange, white, yellow again, so I'm going to do that to get 3 of them done. Once again, it's down the hill. So those 3 are in. Let's check the last 3. I've got yellow to red to green. Okay, another 3 cycle. This time the pieces are moving up the hill, so I'll do a front face turn first, or front edge turn first. That orbit is complete. So have a look at another one. This orbit here, the silver is in position. So can I get, not an easy orange, what about the yellow? Yep, I can get the yellow to here. So this time I'll move those pieces upwards so the yellow comes down to that position. So silver and yellow are done. I can do the same thing with the red, although I need, you may remember from the non-jumbling, I need the wide triangle to be underneath the center. So I'm just going to turn it around, and that means now, if I want the red to go there, I've got to move pieces downwards so this red jumps up to there. So that's what I'll do. Okay, let's have a look. The red's done, the yellow's done, the silver's done. What's left? I've got a white in position, and I've now got an orange and a gold that need to swap. Now here's the interesting thing. In the non-jumbling solve, if I had one orbit that had a single swap, I knew that in another orbit there had to be another single swap. That is not the case here. So I may well find that this is the only orbit that contains a single swap. So I'm just going to leave that for now and look at the last orbit that I haven't done yet, which must be this one, and see what I can do with that orbit. First, the red's in position. Let's get the blue up to there. So how am I going to do this? I'm going to move the pieces downwards so the blue goes to that position. So red's done, blue's done. What's next? A silver, perhaps, or a gold. Let's do the gold. I can get the gold over to here. So again, moving down the hill. That leaves me with, okay, so you'll see here that the orange is done and I have a swap of the silver and the green. So I do happen to have 2 orbits with a swap each, which is similar to the non-jumbling. So I'm going to take care of these, but then I'm going to set up for the interesting case of a single swap in a single orbit. So I take care of these in the same way that I did the non-jumbling solve. I just identified the 2 orbits that need the 2 pieces swapped. And so this is clearly one of them here, and I can see this is another one. So where do they intersect? I've basically got, it's going to be this edge. I've got an orbit of pieces on this edge, and I've got an orbit of pieces on this edge. I don't have to have the pieces in position to swap. I just have to know the 2 edges that I'm dealing with, and in order to do a swap on each, I simply carry out left, right, left, right, left, right. And you'll see that puts the corners back into position, and that's now going to leave me with 3 cycles all solved. So let's see what I've got. In this particular orbit, the orange is moving to here, the silver to here, the green back up to here. So I'll take care of that orbit first. Got to go up the hill in this one. that orbit is now complete, and the final orbit is this one here. I've got white to gold to orange, so I'll turn that around. And now it's white coming downwards to gold to orange like that. And you can see that that has now got all of those wide triangles solved. If it was a non-jumbling solve, we would move on. But as I said here, this is a jumbling solve, and so a very interesting thing can happen. I'm going to set up for that now. Okay, well here we are, and you can see that on this particular orbit, there's a blue wide triangle that needs to go here and needs to swap with a red wide triangle here. So I've got a swap of two things here. No other swaps of wide triangles exist. And so when I first encountered this, it took me quite a while to think, was it even legal? How had I done it? What's going on? And I'm sure there is some kind of quick, long algorithmic fix that will do this, but I would prefer to take you through what we're actually going to do and sort of why it's happened. So in terms of dealing with this, a single swap, this puzzle obviously is analogous to the 𝙍𝙃𝙄𝙎 something or other. I can't remember if it's the 2 or whatever it is, but on those sort of puzzles, you can get a swap of 2, is it petals or corners, something. And that's what's essentially happened here, the same kind of thing. And so in order to deal with that on the 𝙃𝙃 situation, what we did was bring 2 similar colors or 2 the same colors into swappable positions and then did the swap. So that's what I'm going to do here. I want to be able to swap these pieces by jumbling. Sorry, not those pieces by jumble. But obviously if I do a jumble, you know that the other 2 wide triangles are this one and this one. So these are the ones that I want to fill with the same color. And so in order to do that, what I can see up here is a white here, and I could get a white to just cycle to that position there. Now you might be thinking, could I just get, I've got a blue here, could I get another blue and put it there? Well, unfortunately not, because that's a blue that needs to swap, and this other blue is not in that orbit. So that's why I'm going to use the white from here to go to there, and then I'm going to put the white here, which will then go to that position. Or in fact, I guess what I could do is cycle that white directly to there. So that's what I'll do first, is do that cycle. Bring the white over to that position. Let's go down the hill here to do that. Okay, that white is in position. I need another white in position as well. Now I could cycle this white in the same way to here, or I could just turn this like that. I think what I might do is cycle it as I did the other one. So I want to move this white to that position. So again, moving down the hill here to put the white there. All right, and now what you can see is that I have 2 of the same color in these positions. Now I need to be swapping the red and the blue. So what I want to do here is a jumbling move, and I just need to think about which jumbling move to do. Do I do the one where I move this in here and that up there? Or do I do the opposite, where I move this down and that up? And the way to tell is that I want to move out of the way one of the pieces that I need to swap. And so these are the pieces that I need to swap. If I move this one down and this up, you'll notice that those pieces are not touched, and that's no good. So what I need to do is the other way. I need to move this down and this up. They're actually both now moved out of the way. I can do the jumbling move, and then I can put that back into position and that back into position. Now here's the trick. On a 𝙍𝙃𝙄𝙎, they have edges, or certainly the 𝙍𝙀𝙈 2 and 3 have edges. And so you would see that the edge that's sitting here was out. And so you would be thinking, oh, I better turn this back, so put the edge back. Here, you can't see that. So it's not obvious that this now needs to be turned back like that. And what that does is keep the corners and the centers as they should be, essentially. All right, so we've done the jumbling, we've dealt with that swap of wide triangles, we've ensured to turn this edge back to keep things as they should be. Now, what we want to do is have a look at what we need to resolve. And so we go in the same order as before. We first want to look at the corners. And so here, this corner certainly is untouched, this yellow silver. So this is the yellow face here. So I note, even though it looks really good here, this may not be the blue face. This is a correct corner. So this is yellow, green. I need a yellow green corner over there, and you can see it's over here. So I firstly want to move the yellow green corner back to that position. I'm just going to try and cycle these through. If I can, I'll just see if it's, what's the easiest way to get this to happen. I go this way. I don't think so. I think it's going to put it in the, no, it's going to put it in the wrong position. So what you might want to do now, because you're kind of thinking, oh, I'd like to keep everything as it is. Well, it's not necessarily essential. So what you can generally do is just go, I'm essentially going to pretend that I'm starting again, and you know that the corners and the centers are in correct positioning. You know that the wide triangles have now no swaps. So all you're doing is remaking the puzzle. So perhaps I'll just do it without trying to be too finessing. And so that yellow green, does that need to go over to there? That's good. In fact, the other one's now in position as well. So that's the yellow face. This is the white face. The corners look good, but they're not in the correct positions yet. So let's deal with that. Orange, silver. So this one's got to go there. This is green, orange, which is there, and red, gold. Good. So that one's now in position. These two are also in position. So what I can do now is the same as I did before. Just move them out and resolve those corners. So what I'm doing here is nothing new that I have not already done in the solve. It's just fixing up after dealing with that single swap of wide triangles. Okay, so this is the piece that I need to check. I think it needs to be here. So let's see what happens. No, wrong way. So I will go through this quite a bit quicker than I have been. Okay, that's in position. I'll cycle those. And then that, I think, came down to there. Good. All the corners are back where they should be. Next thing, if you remember, we checked the centers. We don't have to check the centers now. We then had to get the wide triangles into orbits. Well, we won't have to do that. And you can again have a look. That's the blue-green orbit. If we follow it around, there will be no blue-green pieces. So none of the wide triangles have changed orbits. What we just need to do now is resolve the wide triangles. This orbit, now this orbit has a swap of gold and silver. So we still may get two swaps here. That's fine. What about this orbit? Orange, green, yellow. I've got a blue, white, red. So there's a 3 cycle there by the look of it. So I'll deal with that. Okay. Another orbit. Blue to red to gold to silver. That's a 4 cycle, which is probably the other swap that I've got. So let's at least get something solved here. Let's put the gold into that position. a silver and a blue to swap. I've got, having a look around, I've got a white and a gold to swap. Is that it? No, I think I've got one more orbit here. The silver. Okay, the blue to the silver to the white. So the final 3 cycle there to carry out. Right, so I should now have my 2 swaps. So let's have a look. I've got the white and the gold, and where was the other one? The blue and the silver. Okay, so that's coming to this orbit here, or I'm just following around these orbits until I get sort of matching edges that I need. It's these 2. Okay, so what I'm looking at here, I've got a blue, silver here, and this is the other orbit that will contain the gold and the white. So I'm going to create a swap here as well. So just keep in mind, what we've done here is the fix for a single swapped wide triangle pair. What we've got now is a double. So you can still get a double at the end. There's no problem with that, 2 swaps. But that single swap is the thing that causes you to have to almost a little bit go back to the beginning. But you can see it didn't really take that long. And I'm now going to do the double swap. And the silver and the blue are in. So now it will just be this particular orbit. Got the red and the orange are in, so let's take care of, let's have one of these. We will get that silver. Yep, let's move the silver up to there. Okay, that's done. I had a setup here, so I'll undo that. Orange, silver, I've got white. Okay, white, yellow, gold, so I'll just set that up to there, and my cycle is now gold to yellow to white up the hill. All done. Where was my setup? Alrighty. Now you can see that all those wide triangles are now completely in orbit and solved, and there are no other surprises. So both for the wide triangles there are no other surprises, but also for the rest of the solve. So the really good news is that's the tricky part of the solve done. You can of course encounter those things that I talked about there and set up for, but now what you're going to do is pretend it's a non-jumbling solve. You're going to just solve the centers, which is really quick. Then you're going to solve these edge wings. So let me firstly solve the centers. I can move the green to there. That silver will come up to there as well, so that's good. And the well, we'll deal with the orange in a minute. So the center cycle is the same as we used in the non-jumbling solve. It's holding it like this. This is my upper edge, right, left. So it's a corner piece series. Up, right, up, left, up, right, up, left. You'll see it puts all the corners back to where they should be, and it has cycled centers like that. Now, if I wanted to cycle centers like that, I would simply do the mirror, up, left, up, right. So I've got those done. Let's have a look what else I can do. I can move the red across to here and the white up to there. So let's do that now. What does that leave me with? A yellow to here, the orange to here, and the gold to here. So I'll absolutely be left with a final 3 cycle. These are in awkward positions, so I can happily set up for them. Let's move, yeah, if I move it like that, I'll get an opportunity to do the mirror here. So the yellow comes to there, the orange goes to there, the gold up to here. So I still turn the upper face or the upper edge first, but then I do a left and then up and then right and then repeat. That's all done. I did have a setup. I'll undo that setup, and of course all the centers are now in. So the last stage of this solve is to do the edge wings, and I said it's not tricky, but it is kind of long, but there's no other surprises. You're not going to be left with, say, a single swap of edge wings at the end or anything like that. So I'll just do a couple of these, probably more extensively in the non-jumbling solve, but just to demonstrate here, I'd like to cycle this to here, this to one of these positions, and hopefully the other orange-green back to here. So I'm going to locate that first. Would have been really nice if it was there. Okay, it's here. Now, can I get that? I probably can do this. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to move this firstly to there and into this starting position. And because I want this orange-green to go to that position, and then this orange-green to go here, I'm going to turn that before I begin. So now the 3 cycle is this. Now the moves for this are quite similar to the edge wings, not exactly the same. So instead of left, right, left now, because I'm coming from the left, it's left, right, left, right, and then it's a back, front, back, and then I undo. So to undo left, right, I want to do right, left, left, and to undo back, front, back, it's back, front, back. You can see both those pieces are now in. So I've got to undo my setups. That was the last that I did, that was the second last, and that was the first. So that's the kind of thing I'm doing. I'm always looking to 3 cycle a piece either here or here to here and down to there as the third one. I'm not going to spend heaps of time here. I encourage you to have a look at the non-jumbling tutorial or the walkthrough solve if you want to have a few more examples. I'll just do one more here and then cut to the end. So what can I do? What's a nice... White gold, where does that go? Well, yeah, the white gold can go to here. I would just check, and I like that. It's going to land in the wrong position because then I can hopefully get the other white gold and make both of them. So the other white gold is here, which I don't think is a super helpful position, but I'll try it anyway. So this time the white gold's coming from the right, so it's right, left, and then back, front, back, and then undoing. That's in. Now, where was this other one? If I bring that, that's no good. What about... Ooh, look at that. That's interesting. Well, again, this is in a nice position. All I need to do is turn this around, and I now have this white gold going to here, this one to here, and this blue red back to here. That's brilliant. It was actually a really good position. Have to turn that around, so you can see that's what I'm doing. As I said, it's not particularly difficult, but there are quite a few of them, so I'm going to keep doing them and cut back in at the end. And here we are down to the last 3. As I said, there's no surprises at this stage, which is nice. And I've got this blue white that needs to go here, this blue white to here, and the blue silver back up to here. So this is, I guess I'd call this a relatively standard setup. I'd really prefer this piece to be here for it, but I can't. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put it here first. So turn that right, and now move it out to that edge, but then turn the right again to put this piece back where it belongs. So I've got 1, 2, 3, and then here's the piece that I want. I'm going to do that back left turn to put it into position. So 4 moves to get that blue white exactly where I need it for the 3 cycle here. And now I can carry out the cycle. All I have to do now is remember the moves to undo. That was one of them. And then it was this, this, this. So I'm going to undo that. And voila. You can see that everything is now completely solved on this edge turning octahedron. Wow. So as I said, that is a much more involved solve when you use jumbling. And I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope it's helped explain what's going on. And again, I appreciate Eitan sending these through. This is a fantastic puzzle. I'm glad to have gotten the opportunity to play with it. The edge turning octahedron, all done. As always, thanks for watching.